The top 10 highest mountains in the world. The 10 mountains with a height of more than 8,000 meters are located in the mountains of Central and South Asia, as well as Western China. This is even true for all 7,000-meter peaks. The highest peak outside Asia is Aconcagua in the Argentine Andes at 6,962 meters, 22,841 feet. The Rocky Mountains follow much later with Mount Elbert, 4,401 meters, 14,439 feet. In general, only the highest point of a mountain is considered a peak, as such. Of course, a mountain can also have further and lower secondary peaks, which are still higher than other mountains. 1. Mount Everest, Himalayas, Nepal Tibet Autonomous Region, China 8,848 meters. Everest's first known summiting occurred by 1953, and interest by climbers increased. Despite the effort and attention poured into expeditions, only about 200 people had summited by 1987. Everest remained a difficult climb for decades, even for serious attempts by professional climbers and large national expeditions, which were the norm until the commercial era began in the 1990s. By March 2012, Everest had been climbed 5,656 times with 223 deaths. Although lower mountains have longer or steeper climbs, Everest is so high the jet stream can hit it. Climbers can be faced with winds beyond 320 km per hour, 200 miles per hour when the weather shifts. At certain times of the year the jet stream shifts north, providing periods of relative calm at the mountain. Other dangers include blizzards and avalanches. 2. K2, Karakoram, Pakistan, China, 8,611 meters. The second highest mountain in the world is K2. The mountain took its name from the notation used by the Great Trigonometrical Survey of British India. At the time, there wasn't an apparent local name for the mountain, and so it stuck. K2 is also nicknamed the Savage Mountain, which is cool in a slightly point-break, over-the-top extreme kind of way. It is fitting, though, too. The mountain is typically considered one of the toughest mountains in the world to climb, notoriously harder than Mount Everest, despite being the second tallest mountain in the world. K2 actually has the second highest fatality rate per summit attempt of all mountains over 8,000 meters, with around 300 successful summits and 77 deaths. The highest fatality rate is that of the 10th highest mountain in the world. Spoiler alert, Annapurna in Nepal. Unlike Annapurna though, K2 had never been summited in winter, until it happened this winter. 3. Kinchenjunga, Himalayas, Nepal, India 8,586 meters. So you knew Mount Everest was the highest mountain in the world. You even knew K2 was the second highest. But we're betting if you asked most people what Kinchenjunga was, they'd guess it was some kind of street food. It is not. Kinchenjunga is the third highest mountain in the world. It can be found between Nepal and Sikkim in India, with 3 of the peaks on the border and the other 2 in the Taplejung district of Nepal. This makes Kinchenjunga the highest peak in India. The mountain was actually thought to be the highest mountain in the world until 1852. This wasn't because people didn't know about Mount Everest, but because they had done their calculations wrong. After further homework by the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India, it was discovered that actually Kinchenjunga was the third highest mountain in the world, and children around the world breathed a sigh of relief that they would be primarily learning about Mount Everest instead, a mountain which is significantly easier to both say and spell. 4. Lotzi, Himalayas, Nepal Tibet Autonomous Region, China 8,516 meters. Lotzi is one of the more famous mountains on any list of the top 10 highest mountains in the world, largely because of its proximity to Mount Everest. The route up Lotzi is the same as that up Mount Everest from Everest Base Camp until you pass Camp 3 and then depart to the Ries Couloir from the Lotzi face, from where the peak of Lotzi is reached. Lotzi is a little like the neglected younger sibling of Mount Everest. Everest gets all the attention while Lotzi, though often considered more visually attractive, is significantly less busy. While the main summit of Lotzi was first climbed in 1956, the Lotzi Middle actually remained the highest unclimbed, named point on Earth for decades. It was eventually first scaled in 2011 by a Russian expedition. 5. Makalu, Himalayas, Nepal Tibet Autonomous Region, China 8,485 meters. Makalu is the third of the 4 8,000 meters high mountains in the Everest Massif in Nepal. It was first summited by a French expedition led by Jean Franco in 1955. Their ascent was most notable for the fact that a full 10 members of the expedition team summited the mountain on the trip. In those days, it was normally only 1 or 2 climbers from each team who reached the top of the mountain on an expedition, so this was a huge deal at the time, and generally, it's just quite nice, isn't it? The first 2 summited on the 15th of May 1955. Then 4 more went up the next day. Then 4 more went up the day after that. Just very wholesome mountain climbing, really. 6. Cho Oyu, Himalayas, Nepal Tibet Autonomous Region, China, 8,188 meters. The 4th and final member of the Everest region's 8,000 meters club is Cho Oyu. The 6th highest mountain in the world at 8,188 meters, Cho Oyu is considered the easiest of the 8,000 meters mountains to climb due to the gentler slopes of the ascent. It's also just a few kilometers away from the Nangpala Pass, a major trading route between the Tibetan and Khumbu Sherpas. If the 4 mountains in the Everest region over 8,000 meters were in a boy band, Cho Oyu would be the laid-back, easy-going backup singer. Not the most flamboyant one, but probably the most relatable. The mountain of the people. If you're wondering, Lotzi would be the best vocalist, always getting its limelight stolen by Everest's over-the-top hairstyles, and Makalu would be somewhere in the background just trying to make sure everyone got along. Weird analogy. We know. Let's move swiftly on. 7. Dhaulagiri, Nepal 8,167 meters. The Dhaulagiri in Nepal is the 7th highest mountain in the world at 8,167 meters, and one of the most aesthetically stunning mountains of the lot. The Dhaulagiri was first climbed on the 13th of May 1960 but is perhaps best known for its visibility on the popular Annapurna circuit, with Annapurna I just 34 kilometers away and the Dhaulagiri a regular feature on the skyline while trekking Annapurna. The mountains are separated by the world's deepest gorge, the Kalagandaki Gorge, so it's not a part of the world that's particularly struggling for scenery. 8. Manaslu, Nepal 8,163 meters. Manaslu is the 8th highest mountain in the world. The name actually comes from the Sanskrit word, manasa, which means intellect, or soul. Manaslu was first scaled by Toshio Imanishi and Galzan Norbu, who were part of a Japanese expedition which reached the top of the mountain on the 9th of May 1956. Their ascent was controversial. Locals of the area had prevented a Japanese team from reaching the top in 1954, believing that previous attempts had displeased the gods and caused avalanches that destroyed a monastery in the area, killing 18 people. The Japanese made a substantial donation to rebuild the monastery, but this didn't restore goodwill towards the expeditions, and as a result, the second ascent of Manaslu didn't take place until 1971, when another Japanese team completed the ascent. 9. Nanga Parbat, Pakistan 8,126 meters. The 9th highest mountain in the world is Nanga Parbat, in the Diamur district of Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan region in the western Himalayas. Like many of the other mountains, the name comes from Sanskrit, with Nanga and Parvata, meaning naked mountain. The Tibetan name for the mountain, Diamur, meaning huge mountain, is maybe a bit more appropriate if a little lacking in creativity. Nanga Parbat truly towers over the surrounding, low-lying valleys around it in every direction. The stunning Rupal face on the mountain rises a full 4,600 meters above its base and is often called the highest mountain face in the world. 10. Annapurna I, Nepal, 8,091 meters. Annapurna I in Nepal is the 10th highest mountain in the world, and one of the most famous mountains on this list courtesy of the fact that the trekking in Annapurna is truly world-renowned. Annapurna I may be only the 10th highest mountain in the world, but it actually has a higher fatality rate than any other mountain on this list, with 32% of attempts to reach the top of the mountain resulting in a fatality.